So in a flood, or the Great Flood, Noah's flood, what first happened?
How did the flood start?
Yeah.
Oh, dramatic. And the Bible makes that quite clear. There was a splitting of the earth, and the deep waters came out with force from deep in the earth and began the flooding process. In fact, we suspect these days, given our Earth's exploration and so on, that the waters certainly did come from deep down and so on. And so the first step would have been the bursting of the surface, water pouring out. But there was also volcanic activity. We know that because some of the sedimentary layers have volcanic activity as well. So you would have seen an eruption of waters. You would have also then seen, because I'm sure you would ask the question, what about the rainfall, that the actual rainfall would occur at the same time. Because whenever there's volcanic activity, you place dust particles in the atmosphere, and that causes rainfall. So if you look at Mount St. Helens, or if you look at Krakatoa, whenever there's been volcanic activity, it creates a lot of dust, which then causes the water vapor to precipitate, and you had heavy rainfall as well. So the Bible makes it quite clear. It burst forth from the ground, and there was also rainfall at the same time. So that's how the flood commenced.
So water just started babbling out of the earth. The gates of heaven were opened up, and it just started raining down. Some volcanoes happened. Were there anything else that was going on? Were there tsunamis?
Oh, absolutely. Turbulence and chaos, worldwide, global. There would have been, if it's hard for us to imagine this because we have not experienced a planet with simply water on it. But the sheer velocities of flow, the turbulence in that flow, the tsunamis possible, absolutely. So we can detect, or we can't see it. We weren't there. But we can sort of model it from a computer point of view, or we can also look at it from the sedimentary point of view, because the sediments indicate to us the type of conditions.
Okay. And creationists believe that there was a little boat floating around. Would it really have survived?
Of that, there's no doubt. I mean, I think we also need to be blunt that God explained to Noah how to build it, how to build that boat. So he didn't build one that was shaky. He was giving him the dimensions. Now, those dimensions, by the way, represent the dimensions of the most stable vessel that can be created today. Tested in naval laboratories or flume studies and so on. That vessel, the Ark, was built for stability. It wasn't built to travel anywhere. It was built to survive. And so it is an incredibly weighted towards the bottom. Its width and its length give it incredible stability beyond our best boats today, which have bows and sterns and so on. They wouldn't survive those tsunami waves and so on that would have been, by the way, in the order of 30 or 50 metres easily in height. The Ark has been tested under those simulated conditions and has no problem whatsoever of travelling in those conditions.
So you're saying the Ark could have survived all of the wind and all of the waves, but what about the tsunamis themselves?
Interesting, when we think of a tsunami, we think of it from a Hollywood point of view. We see a massive wave breaking, smashing cities and so on.
Yeah.
Tsunamis aren't like that. They're energy waves. Now, when they do form an actual wave, they don't break, particularly when they're in the ocean. That's why boats go out to sea when a tsunami is coming, because there is no breaking wave. So the Ark didn't have to deal with a ginormous breaking wave. What it had to deal with was just very large fluctuations in height with long wavelengths. And so, again, it could just ride over those without turbulence. It's wouldn't have been a challenge to ride a tsunami.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, Ron, we also have a resource here, the Answers book. Can you give us a overview of that?
Well, this book here, which I'll just hold up, that book there is the Answers book, but we have it as an e-book as well. Yeah. I think the powerful thing about that particular book and all the e-book is it doesn't just talk about what we're talking about today, which is the flood itself and its dynamics. Yeah. It actually deals with things like the Ice Age and what happened after the flood. It actually deals with the landscapes that we briefly discussed and how they came to be. Well, this book has much more depth on all of that, then connects it in to elements of biological activity and evolutionary activity and so on. That's an incredible book that personally we've used it ourselves in our own home groups and studies. Maybe taking a lesson in a particular evening, and it just draws so much attention when you get to look at it a little bit deeper. So that ebook, I recommend it strongly. And by the way, the ebook is a free ebook.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that there's a link in the description below. Thanks so much for the conversation, Ron.
Thank you, Matt.